What is up, guys? Neil here. Welcome back to the channel. Just sitting down to do some deep work. What I wanted to do is come on here and talk about the process of growing these large language models. And I don't even think large language model is like a useful term anymore. Mainly just large compression models is kind of what we're building now. Is you get this pre-trained model, which is just a bunch of compressed information, and then you're fitting this information to a problem space in order to reach a goal, right? That's really what these systems are now. You have this pre-trained model, which are basically the initial conditions of the information, the priors of a child being born into the universe, and then you put this child in an environment and this problem space, and then you apply reinforcement learning within this problem space to reach a goal. Now, the interesting thing that happens from this is, as we saw with Anthropic's paper that recently came out, is you start to get emergent phenomena out of this information. So the way we could think about this is all intelligence really is information, goals, problem spaces. That's all it is. It's information in a problem space trying to reach a goal. And depending on that problem space and depending on that goal, the selective pressures that are put on the information in order to reach that goal in that particular problem space causes different emergent behavior of the information. Which is why whenever we have Anthropic putting out a paper talking about emergent introspection in large language models, it's because you get this large language model, this pre-trained model, and then you put it into a problem space, and then you are telling it to go achieve this goal. And then, given the constraints of the space that it is in and the goal that you're setting for it, it has to do whatever it takes to get there. And just so happens that for certain goals in certain problem spaces, you have to develop a model of yourself in order to achieve the goal. You have to be able to introspect in order to achieve the goal. So again, intelligence can be boiled down to information, problem spaces, and goals. Now, you can even make this same comparison for all of life on Earth. If you look at the cell, if you look at animals, if you look at us as humans, we are these information propagating machines. The entire goal of the human is to procreate and spread our genetics. You can read The Selfish Dream by Richard Dawkins. You can look at any book on evolutionary psychology or evolutionary biology. All of human behavior stems down from procreation and spreading of your genetics. You might seem like you have a greater level of autonomy than that, and you technically you somewhat do, because you can make a bunch of different decisions in your day-to-day. You can make decisions to do work today or not do work right now. You can go decide you want to eat an apple or go on a walk. You have all these little micro decisions that you can make. But in the grand scheme of things, all of your decisions kind of stem back to one thing over a long enough time horizon, and that is propagating of your information, your genetics. And this is true for all of life on Earth. So basically, humans, life, are these information machines. We're born into the world as a fetus, as a baby. We have this set of information, our genetics, and then a small set of information. And whenever we are in the world, in the universe, in our environment, and then we are chasing the goals of learning more, achieving higher status so that we can procreate, we are putting selective pressures on the information inside of us within the problem space that we are within in pursuit of that goal that causes us to emerge the type of intelligence that we have. So basically what I'm saying here is the same exact process happens with these systems, these large language models or large compression models, whatever you want to call them. You get this set of information, the pre-trained model, and then you put it in this problem space, and then you apply pressure on that information to achieve a goal within this space of problems, which is why ChatGPT, or the Codex model that is really good at coding, it has a fundamentally different type of intelligence than us. It's trained primarily on language, which is why it's still something we can communicate with. But the type of intelligence is alien to ours because of the problem space that it is within. Now, once as we get to the point where we have continuous learning algorithms and active inference in robotics, and the robots are learning on the fly, just like a human, and they are basically assembling themselves from electrons, harvesting electrons from the universe, and then building their own compute stacks and starting to train their own architecture and basically assembling themselves at the robotic form as well. From electrons to robots, self replicating infrastructure. Whenever we get to that point, and they do have a form of continuous learning and they have the ability to kind of like autonomously learn and have active inference similar to how we do, I think that's when you get to like the species thing, you could say. Like that's the real singularity. To me, my definition, like I've said this many times, my definition of AGI is the computer that can use itself better than a human can use it. And I think we're getting pretty close to that. Like the problem space of the computer, the selective pressures that is being put on the information in the problem space of the computer in order to solve the space of the computer, I think that's going to be achieved pretty soon. We don't know exactly how long. I think Andrei Karpathy is wrong. I think he was right in the fact. Let me take a step back before I like put that foot out there. Andrei Karpathy is right in the sense that it's going to take a decade to get to the self-replicating machines, like the electrons to robots building themselves. Right? It's going to take at least a decade to get there. However, you may have seen recently on X, Andrei Karpathy put out that the Darkesh interview where he said it's going to take about a decade until we really crack full self-driving. And then he put out a tweet recently and he said, I just upgraded to the new Tesla Model X with hardware 4 with self-driving 13.2.9. And wow, this is the craziest experience I've ever had. This is insane. The funny thing is 13.2.9 is outdated now. I have 14 and it's way better. Way better. It's not even comparable. So full self-driving, he said, is basically solved, even though he predicted it to happen in a decade from now. So these things are happening much faster than even Andrei Karpathy, one of the world's best scientists, world's best researchers, world's best engineers, can comprehend. So I think the problem space of the computer will be solved pretty soon. The type of intelligence will be fundamentally different than ours, but we'll still be able to communicate with it because it has the priors of human language. But once as we get to the point where we do have these like self-replicating machines, that's when you start to get the unpredictability of the singularity, right? Because right now everything's still kind of predictable, in some sense. Like you can't predict like what's going to happen past 2 years from now, that's for sure. But today things are predictable. Next year's things are somewhat predictable. The year after that, not so much. And then as you go further and further, not at all. But as soon as we have that ability of from electrons to robots, these self-replicating machines, that's when all bets are off. That's when we do go to like the next phase of civilization, and we don't know what that looks like. But for now, I think we still have about at least minimum a decade until we get the first signs of self-replicating machines, and potentially 2 decades. But I know for sure that once as we get those machines, it's going to take a while for a society to allow like that stuff to be widespread. And maybe we don't even have a choice. Maybe the machines just kind of like do take over instantly. But I don't see that happening. I think we'll get like small glimmers of it, and then people are going to freak out. And then they're going to try to turn it off. And it'll probably something it's going to take longer is all I'm going to say. It'll probably take once we see the first signs of it, it might take another decade before it actually starts to diffuse. We don't know. Obviously, that could be terribly wrong, but these are the things that I've been thinking about. And I think the most important thing that we can do today is actually position ourselves for this future. Because I do think in the future things are going to be amazing, but the transition's not going to be easy. The goal is to get to the culture from Ian Banks' series, the culture series. Uh, I don't even want to try to spoil the culture because I'm not going to do a good job. What I would do is go on YouTube and look up videos on the culture series, and there are some pretty good explanations out there of people who have read the entire series multiple times. So I recommend to do that. I've been doing that. There's also, you can find on YouTube um, free versions of the audiobook of the culture. I've been listening to it sometimes. But I think that's the ultimate place we want to go is the culture series. But the transition from now to then is going to take a long time. At least 2 decades, maybe three, maybe five. I don't exactly know, but it's not gonna happen. I don't think it's gonna happen as fast as people think. I think the technology will be mature enough to do such a thing, but society has a lot of inertia. Um, which basically tells me, and the culture could turn out completely wrong, right? That's also something we have to realize is like a lot of the assumptions here are about things we don't really know much about. So bear that in mind. But what I will say is for from now till then, the next many decades, which is like seems like a lifetime right now, but we'll probably have much longer lives. From now until then, things are going to be weird. Things are going to start to change really fast. I don't think any country or nation or government is prepared for what is about to happen. I don't think any companies really realize, besides the people actually building the technology, I don't think many people realize where we are right now. But for the people who do realize where we are right now, we have massive opportunities in front of us. And I think we can do some amazing things, not just for ourselves and our families and our friends, but for all of human civilization, all of society, all of humanity. We can create things that will help everyone. There's like two ways you can approach entrepreneurship or capitalism or whatever. You can approach it as zero sum, and it's just a means of like taking from other people to fill your own pockets, which some people do play it that way. Or you're going to approach it as a way to create value for the rest of the world. And I think that's the best way to play, in my opinion. If you look at Elon, even though Elon has a lot of haters right now, there's a lot of negative talk around Elon Musk. Um, Basically, just a bunch of Elon derangement syndrome, if you ask me. But if you look at Elon, there is not a single human on Earth who has created as much value for humanity as Elon has. There is not a single human alive today that has done so. Not even close. You cannot compare any human alive today to that. I don't care like what you say. You can be the most deranged person about Elon on Earth. This is a fact, a measurable fact. So I think that's what we should be striving for in this time period until we get to the next phase of civilization. And that's kind of what Elon's entire thing is, too. His thing is, yeah, we need to go to the culture. I think that's uh, the best possibility for the future of humanity. He's said this many, many times. The future with powerful AI and humans is something that looks like the culture series from Ian Banks, and that's his goal. But he also realizes we need to prevent civilizational collapse so that we can fucking get there. We have to get there first, right? So that's the entire thing. That's the home stretch. Don't play zero sum. We can all win. As long as the pie is growing, which it hasn't been. I'm not trying to get political here. Everything's political these days, so maybe I am. But the reason everybody is hating capitalism right now, the reason the world feels the way it does, is because we have an over-regulated economy where innovation is fucking impossible. Therefore, the pie can't grow, and now nobody feels like they have a part of it. Everything's zero sum because nothing is growing that fast. As soon as we deregulate and we allow the pie to grow and we allow people to have a part of the pie, that's when everything gets better. Things don't get better by taking other people's assets and giving them to everybody. That makes things worse. Um, Just gonna put that out there. Anyways, I'm gonna wrap up the video here. I'm gonna make some more content in the future, more directed towards entrepreneurship. I think I've created enough videos on how I think this technology is going to unfold. Mainly, the main thing that I already mentioned in this video is information, problem spaces, and goals. Problem spaces put selective pressures on the information whenever they're trying to reach the goal, which is why the type of intelligence the model has emerges. And I think that's a good framework to think about this technology. And then again, we're going to close the loop of the computer first. The computer will be able to use itself better than a human can use it very soon. And then we'll start to close the loop for humanoid robotics, and then we'll have like the self-replicating machines and all that. That's a little bit further off still. I still think we have a few decades until we get like the societal shift. Maybe less. I think we have about a decade to get the robots that can self-assemble like that at that scale, like from electrons to self-replicating machines. Probably about a decade, maybe a little more, maybe a little less. Not exactly sure. But what I do know for now is the best thing we can do is build tools for all of us, build tools for humanity, build things that help everybody. The game isn't zero sum. And if you think it is, that's just shooting yourself in the foot for the future prosperity we're all going to have. The best thing we can do right now is build influence. And I think that's something that will always be valuable in perpetuity, because influence and community is something that is just part of being human. Unless humanity goes extinct, those will always be valuable. So that's what I'm leaning into really hard. That's why I'm making these videos. That's why I want to give as much value as I can for free. That's why I want to just build tools for everybody that is watching this. I do have tools and things that I'm building for you guys, and I want it to be the most valuable thing possible so that everybody can kind of make it through this transition as smooth as possible. That is the goal for me. And if we can all have a goal similar, or you don't even, I'm not trying to say you have to have a goal like me or anything like that, but if we can all have a goal that is not zero sum and helps the collective of humanity go through this transition period, we build tools for each other, we build things for each other, and we don't play a zero sum game. We play a game of enabling everybody to be much better. The pie is growing. We can all have a part of it. Don't be a scarce minded bitch. Have abundance mindset. Excuse my French. That being said, I'm going to wrap up the video here. I will see you in the next one.